this video, I'm going to tell you what's going on with all these Warcry books. So, Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry, the skirmish game, got a relatively large release recently, though I don't feel it really got the fanfare that it sort of should have. Now, admittedly, there were production issues right off the bat because that's the world we live in right now with the pandemic and all that. Hopefully, not much longer. But over here in North America, we got them a bit later than you did. And what I'm talking about is all these big honkin' books. There are 5 books that came out all at once, not staggered over several weeks, anything like that. Just boom, dropped them all at once. And started with the new Tome of Champions 2020. So there was a Tome of Champions 2019 that came out, and this is kind of like your chapter approved, your Kill Team Annual, your whatever the Age of Sigmar one is. I can't think of what it's called off the top. General's Handbook. But these have a lot of extra stuff. There's a lot of extra new things, new missions, all kinds of jazz like this. Now, what makes this different than other books like this in these series is that generally these also then have a bunch of point, changes and things like that, and just information like that. And it's kind of seen as an update. In Kill Team Annual, boom, we drop here's a new point costs for different models. Same with Chapter Approved. Same with General's Handbook. And this one's predominantly sticking with campaign stuff, narrative stuff, things like that. Different types of battles you can have. There's a lot of different cool things going on in here. Updates to campaign rules, all that. But this has not got any new updates as far as points or units or anything like that. That's what the other books are for. So these new books, there's one for each of the grand alliances. You've got your order, you've got your chaos, you've got your destruction, and you've got death. These books have the kind of new point costs and things like that. If that's all you're interested in, then you're looking at these books. But there's more to it than that. Each one of these books has got obviously some if challenge battles and death fated quests and things like that will add all kinds of interest and new play styles and possibilities to your games. But then they also have all the different war bands in here now. And this is where these books have, in my opinion, gotten a little interesting. So you have the information about the different types of, and there's background tables if you want to name your different people, Flesh Eater Court's first names are things like Regulus and Brom and Edrin, and you can roll on the chart if you want to. But the really kind of important information is this stuff. This is the cards, kind of. This is what the cards would be like if they were cards. This is the stats for each of the different armies. And you've got your Bone Reapers here. You've got, the Night Haunts. And as a person who's been getting into Warcry and has bought some of the cards, I've got the Maggotkin Rotbringer cards, the Mortals, and I've got the Skaven cards. I might have another set of cards too, but I don't know exactly where they are. The thing that I'm finding interesting about these new books is that these new books have more units than the cards do. The cards that I literally bought 6 months ago. I bought these cards and now I have them. And now both, at least from what I can tell, in the Chaos book, which is here, Agents of Chaos, the Maggotkin Rotbringer has got a bunch of new models built into it, section, and also so do the Skaven. The Skaven pages go on for days. Well, maybe not days. But so you got your Rotbringers. Lord of Plagues and Lord of Blights both used to be in the Monsters and Mercenaries, or is it Mercenaries and Monsters? Monsters and Mercenaries book. I've got it over there. And they were known as allies, and now they're kind of not. You'll notice they don't have the little ally symbol that they used to. As a matter of fact, kind of the ally symbol is gone. What happened with the allies that you had in Monsters and Mercenary? Well, it's kind of interesting. There's this little section right here, if you can kind of see it. If you have the Warcry Monsters and Mercenaries expansion, the rules in this section supersede the allies' rules in that book. So basically, these new books, the 4 of them, the Grand Alliance books, I don't want to say they invalidate the Monsters and Mercenaries books because there's other stuff in there. There's the monster stuff, and there's a bunch of different types of missions and the narrative jazz. But the whole section about these allies and those allies and this and that, that's all kind of gone because of these new books. So, like I said, Monsters and Mercenaries, A lot of this has been kind of invalidated, frankly, which is, to some people who maybe have just gotten it relatively recently are going to be bummed. That's the way these things work, I guess. So yeah, the whole allies section is missing, but the monsters and the different types of missions where you're fighting against cool things like Gargants and Terrorgeist and stuff like that, that stuff's still good in that book. So there's at least that. But the whole ally thing has changed, and it's changed quite drastically. Now, I was going to take a look on Battlescribe to see how they've shook that out, because I have built lists before using Battlescribe, using the allies and that kind of stuff for my Night Haunts. Now, I don't have the Night Haunts cards, not the ones that came in the packet, because I bought the box set, all that stuff. But the thing is that they haven't upgraded at this point, February 4th, 2021. They haven't updated Warcry yet with all the stuff that's from this. They haven't updated that on Battlescribe yet. So I don't know exactly when that's supposed to change. And I even manually went in and said, update this data repository. And still nothing since, I think, September. So that's kind of interesting. I'll tell you the points cost have changed. So all the cards that I've got for, again, Maggotkin and for the Skaven, those now are, the stats are all the same. It's just this little points thing right here that you see. This one says 190 for the Blazing Lord from the Scions of the Flame. And that's not probably, it might still be the case with those guys, because the thing that's interesting about the Chaos book, if you're interested in any of the special warbands they made directly for Warcry, so your Scions of the Flame, your Corvus Cabal, your Unmade, Iron Golems, there's a bunch of them. If you're interested in those, now you could buy this Chaos book and see all the stats and see all the information and then determine which one of those you might want to buy if you're interested in that. These other books, like the Harbingers of Destruction, this book is way thinner. I don't know if you can tell here. Let's see if you can see. It's way thinner than the Chaos book. The Chaos and the Order books are, of course, the thickest, and Death and Destruction are much thinner. But these don't have... This stuff is just the standard things that you would get for Age of Sigmar. Same with Death. But Agents of Chaos has also got, all the stats and all the cards for all the, at this point, 7 or 8 different warbands that they've made just for Warcry. So if you're interested in those, you've been wondering about, you really like the models for Corvus Cabal, like I do, and you're like, I don't know about the stats though, now you can go and look in this book and pick it up. So a benefit of doing it this way, I guess, is that you can buy these books separately. Like if you're just interested in Order, well, then you can just buy the Order book instead of having to buy, a much bigger book. And if they were, frankly, to take all of the stuff that they put in these 4 books, right, that just came out, and put all of it into the Tome of Champions, this would be a very expensive and thick book, probably almost difficult to do in softcover, because it would potentially be so thick that it would get... I don't know, it can get kind of fragile, like this type of binding, that kind of thing. So it would probably end up having to be maybe a hardcover, which would then, of course, make it much more expensive again. So, I can understand why they decided to do it this way and separate it out and put that information. But the fact that they dropped all 5 at once is a bit problematic. People currently don't think the same way about Warcry as they do about Kill Team right now, and that is, there's a lot of people out there in the current community that think that Kill Team is on its last legs because Games Workshop hasn't been producing things for it very much at all. Like they got this Pariah Nexus thing that's coming out soon, which I talked about. Ciao. But, is it, when's it? Well, we kind of have a vague idea of when it's coming, and now we know what at least is inside the box. But what's coming after that? Is there going to be a second edition of Kill Team? All that kind of stuff. A lot of people think that Kill Team's on its way out, and I don't agree, but people don't think that quite as much with Warcry. But I gotta say, the way that they sort of dropped all this stuff at once, and the last thing that we saw for Warcry previous to this, I think, was Catacombs, which was that sort of newer starter box with far less terrain. It's a lot flatter, more like you're walking around inside catacombs, strangely enough. I think that putting out all these books at once is a little troublesome. The thing is that for this year, this Tome of Champions doesn't really do what the previous one did, which is to say update, give you stats, all that kind of stuff. It's instead just a bunch of new types of missions and a bunch of new types of narrative information, which is great, and I appreciate it. But then you end up having to pick up these books too. Now, they're not crazy expensive. I don't 100% remember how much they cost. I'll try to put it here on the screen. But I just don't know if this is the right answer. And the thing that's interesting is that, even though I don't know if it's the right answer, it is giving you a lot new stuff. Like if I go back to the Maggotkin of Nurgle, the Rotbringers, who are some of my favorites, as you've seen probably. Especially if you follow me on Twitch, I painted my Rotbringers and everything on Twitch, and it was a hoot. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But if you go through all of those, here's the Skaven. I was mentioning before the Skaven. Skaven. That's a lot of Skaven. That's a lot of dudes. And there weren't that many cards in the original set, so they've added in a bunch of stuff here too. And if I ever get to the right section, Nurgle Rotbringers. So Lord of Plagues and Lord of Blights, they were in the Monsters and Mercenary books, and they were add-ons. They were mercenaries. Lord of Afflictions, Rotbringer Sorcerer, and Harbinger of Decay, I don't think that those guys were anywhere before. Now they're just put in here generally as leaders. That icon means leader. So these guys could be a leader, and then these guys aren't. This is all standard. This was all stuff that was in the original card pack. He was in the card pack. These were in Monsters and Mercenaries. So you're getting extra models, in your stats. And again, like I said, all the prices or costs for points, many of them do seem to be different. And many of them seem, from what I've just been seeing anecdotally, they seem to have gone up. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And like I said, currently, Battlescribe's not updated that I've seen. So we'll have to wait on that as well. So I think it's maybe a bit of a misstep to dump all of these at once. I almost wonder if it wouldn't have been a good idea maybe to try to say like every 2 weeks to drop another one. But on the other hand, then people complain when they're like, well, I got to wait until mine is the end and everything. And then people are going to complain no matter what you do, whether you give them all the books at once or whether you spread them out over time. So this was probably the right answer, even though it's kind of a weird PR move to just dump a bunch of stuff and then be like, okay, see ya. And then again, like I said, it sort of seems like we're not hearing much about Warcry again. But hopefully we'll hear more about it in the future. Hopefully we'll see another starter box in the future, because it would be great for people to be able to get into the hobby and get that great terrain, or something like that great terrain. They've released plenty of terrain kits and things like that, and obviously you can buy the core book for relatively inexpensive and all that kind of stuff. But it's a different game in that the core book in Warcry has, it has the information in it for all the different armies. And that's never exactly been the case with Warcry. So again, it's a different system. Now, if you're interested in specifically, say, Chaos, or specifically Order, or any of them, you can buy one. But if you're interested in a couple, well, then you're going to have to buy two and all that kind of stuff. And there's the new 2020 Tome of Champions. So I hope this helps you figure out, why did they drop all these books at once? What is the point? What are they for? Because they're useful. They're really great books. They've got a lot of great information. And do you need every single one? No. I bought them, but I'm kind of crazy. And to be fair, I do eventually want to do some orcs. So then I'm going to need this book anyway. But I do have Death, I do have Chaos, and I do have Order. So I kind of wanted those. So if you're interested, take a look at them, because they can give you all the new points, all the new information, the stuff that I would expect that generally would have been in Tome of Champions, but isn't. And if you want to pick up Tome of Champions, honestly, it's not the necessity, maybe, that the 2019 was, at least in my opinion. It's a little bit more of a, here's a bunch of cool add-on stuff. And, they talk about, here's some new things for competitive play and stuff like that. But if you're just interested in playing and getting together with your friends and having a good time, and you play Chaos, or you play Death, or you play Order, well then sure, just pick up this book. You'll have all the stats you'll be able to use. You'll also get to maybe add some new models into your warband, because they've added new things. You'll have the right points, and you'll also have some other stuff that's specific, narrative type cool missions and things like that, specifically for your group, your army. And you don't need to buy all of them, again, like I said, and you don't really, in my opinion, need to buy Tome of Champions unless you're more into the, all the different new missions and things like that. You've played through all of the old missions. But there's a lot of books here that have all of a sudden come out at once, and I kind of wanted to make it a little clear so that you can go into your local game store or order from your local game place or whatever it is in this 2021 and know what you're looking for, and not necessarily overbuy or not look at it and go, I don't want to, even though it would be helpful to have that information, because again, like I said, lots of points, costs, changes, and things like that to the models, and also a bunch of new models that you can add to your warbands.